So that's an initial practice. These are just this is all that I'm saying now is reminding people of things that I'm sure all of you already know. Some of you certainly know, and some of you I'm sure heard it before at least once. Then we have to engage, having stabilized the mind a little bit, in the things we spoke about last week. Was it last week or the week before? 2 weeks ago maybe. We spoke about the 4 kind of practices that can change the mind, that can make us stop drowning. They help us to stop drowning in this ocean of the 5 dregs, the 5 degenerations. Can any of the newish students remember those 4 ways of looking at the practices to be done, 4 reflections to be engaged in a powerful way? Anyone remember those 4? Which we spent the whole of 2 weeks ago in the morning discussing pretty much. Anyone remember? Yeah?
I remember just one.
Bataya, that's better than nothing.
Meditating on death.
Yeah, death and impermanence.
Death.
Usually highly important, very important. What do we often discuss even before that? Before death and impermanence?
Precious human rebirth.
Precious, yes. Are you a new student?
Oh, sorry. I wasn't.
Yes, this, as Shantideva says, this boat of a human body, use it to cross to the other shore. This is no time to sleep, you fool, he says. Or in one translation they say, oh foolish one, don't sleep when you have this human boat-like body which can take you to the other shore, beyond the terrifying ocean of samsara. What are we doing? Wasting our time, sleeping, when we have this precious opportunity. So realizing death and impermanence. What else do we have to realize to get some strong sense of the urgent situation we're in? Where Buddha says even that we should be like somebody who's in a house on fire. We should feel like we're in a house on fire. Our only thought should be to get out of the house. Also, he gives one example. I don't know. Obviously, someone who hadn't. Well, anyway, I was going to say someone with dry hair, but it could also be with oily hair. He gives the example of a woman whose hair is on fire. I guess this could happen. So how quickly you would go to douse the flames towards water. So how do we get to that state of mind where we are so concerned about the situation we're in and wish to get out of it? What else do we have to do apart from meditating on the preciousness of our human opportunity and the fact that impermanence and death is there, and that it's going to rob us of this opportunity at any time? What's the third thing we have to reflect on? Mayankji, latecomer. What's the third thing? You were sitting here last week and I asked you the same thing and you gave the correct answer, I believe. If you can think that long time ago, 2 weeks ago. It's a long time ago.
It's futility of samsara.
It is sometimes called that in one way, but not what First Noble Truth.
Yes, the truth of suffering.
Yeah, so if we don't look at the shortcomings of samsara, the suffering, then we can be tricked into thinking that it's pretty much okay. Things are okay, things are under control, things are okay, and if it's not okay, well, that's the way life is. What to do, Everybody else seems to be just getting on with their life and running around and doing what they do, so why should I be different? But yeah, if we reflect deeply, and what for you would be the most powerful aspect of those basic teachings on suffering, Mayankji? What would be the most interesting or for you useful part of those teachings on suffering? Apart from the fact, of course, that headaches and broken legs are suffering, that's obvious. But any other aspects which you think might be very powerful and
Suffering of change whenever it seems that it's...
Explain, please.
That things that we find agreeable and things that we like basically don't give the lasting happiness, and the happiness that comes is going to change basically.
Change into what? More
Change
happiness?
into suffering.
One example can you give? One simple example?
Anything, for example, food that I like.
Mm-hmm.
If it was to give lasting happiness, more I eat, more should be the happiness. But
Mhm.
that's not the case.
Okay.
Beyond a point, it will turn into suffering.
Definitely. Yeah, that's one good example. So, so these things, not like eating is bad or going into the shelter of a tree is bad when it's hot, but the point being made here is that whatever we enjoy through our five senses, and even the mental sense, in samsara, in ordinary life, whatever we enjoy doesn't last. And if we keep on trying to perpetuate it, it will change. It does change into its opposite. It changes into suffering, great suffering, whatever it is. There's only a certain amount of pleasure we can handle also before it becomes suffering on any level, except certain mental levels, which we're not talking of right now. But even if we talk about very, very high levels of mental happiness, extraordinary levels, even they, according to Lord Buddha, are at least within they're part of changing suffering and also within all-pervasive suffering, because there are said to be, according to Lord Buddha, apart from some human beings, of course, who have very deep meditation and so forth, there are certain states where beings can achieve very, very high states of concentration and bliss, which they can remain in for maybe thousands of years. But that's also suffering. In the nature of suffering, or dukkha, the better you use that word, because it is going to change. Those beings are going to die and then have lower rebirths, according to Lord Buddha, because they've exhausted their certain kind of good karma, which is giving them that blissful state for thousands of years. There are certain levels of gods and so forth, very, very long, blissful lives. So we would think, wow, that's wonderful. I wish I could have that. But that's also suffering. Because they have no control over their death. They have not realized the emptiness. They do not have understanding of ultimate truth. So they still have a level of ego and so forth. They have not generated great compassion. So all of these things mean that they have not created the causes for liberation or enlightenment. All they've done is created the cause for a very long-lasting, blissful experience, which is not good enough. When the karma finishes, when the fuel is exhausted, they die. They die. And then there's nowhere to go except down. These very high-level gods. Nowhere to go except in a lower rebirth, which for them is awful. So even that is suffering, you see, big suffering. So if we have this kind of mental and physical aggregates, body, mind, like we have, dominated with the seed of karma, delusion, there is suffering. What's the fourth? What's the fourth reflection? That could be very powerful if we really go into it deeply and study what the Buddha said about it. But even on another level, on a more superficial level, it could also be quite powerful. What's that topic? The fourth. Aji, Dr. Anita, the fourth. You remember?
Reflection on impermanence.
We've done that. We've done precious human rebirth,
Ego,
impermanence
self.
and death. We've done suffering and
Life is precious.
that's the first.
Ego, self, how we cling to ourselves.
That comes within suffering. All pervasive suffering is caused by that all pervasive, that ignorance and the other destructive emotions. Karam or klesh, driving, that comes within the third also. But what is the fourth? Which is connected with actually the deepest level of suffering. The cause of the deepest level of suffering is, of course, delusion and old student, help out? Karma. So if we don't reflect on actions and their consequences, again we become careless. Lord Buddha said, even small things we do which are positive can have a wonderful positive result. Small things we do which are negative with a negative intention can bring very powerful negative results. We may not be able to understand these things right now without studying more. So of course we should study more. But just take one example. And of course, this does depend to some extent, I agree, on having some feeling for continuity of consciousness. The fact that mind doesn't stop with the death of the brain and the body, doesn't get burnt up in the funeral pyre or buried in the ground. Mind survives all that. A certain subtle level survives that. And then what happens? It has the seeds, it has the potentialities which are there from all of the actions we've done. So just taking one simple example, if we are somebody who has been very generous and is a very generous person in many ways, that kind of mental habit is very likely to also be there in a future life as a human being. Or even as a certain kind of animal, we might be a more positively inclined, sort of less aggressive, kind of animal. That's possible. So in other words, if we develop strong positive habits, then even in this lifetime we can see the benefits, right, of being generous or kind or forgiving. We can see benefits very quickly, actually. But Lord Buddha is saying much more than that. He's saying that even after this particular identity we have is completely gone, what we consider me is completely gone, still a subtle level of consciousness is holding in some almost magical way those imprints of generosity, of kindness that we created, which will give their positive fruit in the future. So that's wonderful. But the point is, we've engaged in so many harmful actions as well. And then if we're there, the problem is we can generate the habit of behaving like that again and again. Then there are many teachings on karma. I don't want to go into that much this morning because there's other things to discuss. But we should, if we're serious, we should look at what the stages of the path teachings, for example, say about karma and what kind of results you can expect from certain actions. So if you're someone who constantly is sick, or people close to you die, or you yourself have injuries and a short life, then that is the result of killing, previous karma of killing. If people don't believe you, very often, even though you try and tell the truth as much as possible, whereas other people who are lying are believed, sometimes, but you tell the truth, people don't believe you, that's the result of karma of lying. If people around you are disharmonious, don't listen to what you're saying, cheat on you in different ways, are not nice to you, that's due to your own sexual misconduct and conduct like that in the past. That's why you have people around you who behave like that. These are certain teachings which are given, which we can think about, If we're always hearing very harsh speech, people criticizing, shouting at us or in our home environment and so forth, then that's a result of our own harsh speech. Like a wheel of sharp weapons coming back, as one teacher put it. It's a wheel of sharp weapons. The sharp weapons come back on us. We put things on the wheel and they come back to us like a boomerang. If people constantly waste our time with idle gossip, chit-chat, we just don't want to listen to it. Again, we have to say, is there a cause? We can't just say, the cause is this person in front of me. Well, that's the immediate trigger, but the deeper cause is that we've also engaged in that kind of activity. We have bored people, wasted their time with endless nonsense, So these are things we can ponder. All of those 10 non-virtuous actions have their results. So if we get slandered, divided from our friends, if people divide us from our friends through negative talk and divisive talk, then we can be sure we also engaged in that kind of activity in the past, and this is the karmic result. So in one way, this is a very disturbing teaching. In another way, it's a teaching that can give us tremendous fortitude, because things that happen to us become understandable, and then we can use that knowledge to adjust our behavior, let's say, behave in a different way. If people don't love us, if people are not nice to us, if people ignore us, then we have to search for the karmic cause and act in a different way. Act in a different way, starting now. course, we have to get rid of the belief that, oh, this is destined, God or Buddha wants this for us. No, we created it. We set that ball in motion. We set that wheel of sharp weapons in motion. It's coming back on me. There's no other really very creative way to look at it. Otherwise, you can just say, well, there's no reason. No reason it's happening to me. It's just bad luck. So that doesn't really motivate you to change your behavior. Or, of course, you can put the blame on God, Buddha, or not even though, some jealous God. You can say, well, it's not, the creator, it's not Lord Buddha, but some other jealous or bad spirits or influences are, the cause of my problem. Sometimes, of course, they are. Sometimes spirits and, beings can be the trigger for our problems. But again, the root cause is our negative karma. And the root cause of our negative karma is what? What's the root cause of our negative karma? Mayanti? Sorry, I'm picking on you today.
Ignorance.
Ignorance. Excellent. So the root cause of our negative karma is ignorance in the mind and the disturbing emotions of anger and attachment and so forth that come out of that ignorance. So then we feel some motivation. So actually these 4 meditations, they're a package which have different factors, don't they? The first one is very encouraging that we have this precious human life. Maybe we also hear teachings on Buddha nature. We have this treasure kind of consciousness which we can activate, which will help us to be enlightened, to become a Buddha. So there's so many wonderful things in that teaching to inspire us. But then the next one makes us much more cautious. It makes us say, wow, there's a sense of urgency. This is not going to last. My situation isn't going to last. It's very sad. Then the third one also, suffering. That can really make us feel, this huge prison I'm in. This is a dreadful prison. Dreadful prison I'm in which I'm fastening my chains when I'm careless of cause and effect. The fourth point, I'm just making this prison longer lasting for myself and even more harmful and suffering when I am not aware of my negative karma, how I behave when I'm careless. So all of these things put together can make us into a more sort of mature, cautious, urgent, but also positive individual, because we realize that with this boat of the human body, we can actually progress. To Buddhahood. Because we have the help of the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And we have the main thing there is the Dharma, the actual medicine. Which is why some teachers, especially now, very much reminding us again and again. Don't forget to pray, they say, that the Dharma may last a long time. The medicine must be there for the sickness of sentient beings. If the medicine is not there, then there's no antidote, there's no cure for the suffering. We must pray that the medicine of the Dharma stays a long time. And one way to do that is to study and practice and do what the Lamas tell us, the teachers, to meditate and so forth. And in general, be a good human being, kind human being. So how to be a kind human being? Let me just kick off the topic before we engage in that ritual, which is symbolic of the great kindness of human beings. Those who discovered tea leaf and those who milked the cow and the cow themselves. And the people who tilled the soil where the sugar beet was grown. Before we engage in that great ritual, where so many people have been kind, we just can hear a little bit about the first topic. So here I want to talk a little bit about equanimity. How can we begin to soften? So already say we're taking a lot for granted. I'm taking a lot for granted that we have some understanding that we have to work with our mind, make friends with ourselves. We have some beginning to understand how important it is to realize our situation, the desperate situation we're in. It's desperate but also positive, because we've met the Dharma, we have the facilities to practice, all of that. So it's a wonderful situation, but it's like a very tricky situation. It can go wrong. We have to be very careful, extremely careful, and be on our guard. Only if we're on our guard will we avoid the pitfalls. and not fall into this awful ocean of pain and suffering for a very long time. So we're beginning to understand that. But how do we actually get to grips with this particular kind of teaching where we're talking about transforming these difficult situations into happiness? What is the path that will help us do that specifically? There are many paths. Here I'm focusing on one particular aspect of the teachings, which is a part of the Mahayana tradition, where, remember, the ultimate aim is Buddhahood. So in the initial stages, we are really trying to develop very powerfully state of compassion and kindness towards others, deep kindness, based on what we've looked at for this morning, which is basically helping us to develop renunciation, not regarding this life as some kind of playground, but seeing its very dangerous nature. Okay, so this equanimity means creating a fertile situation where genuine love, wishing others to be happy, and genuine compassion, wishing them to be free of pain, can arise in our minds, genuinely, powerfully, so that we can take that even further and even develop that amazing, sublime resolve of bodhisattvas who then take responsibility to help others, who aim to spend the rest of their existence, all the time, just benefiting others, realizing they have to attain Buddhahood in order to benefit others properly. So spending their whole lives, all their lives, generating the causes for highest enlightenment, which is basically a path of benefiting others. So how do we do that? We have to first see how others are kind. We have to see how, even before others are kind, what do I have in common with others? Why should I care about others? Right? Why should I transform myself from what Scott Fitzgerald called a careless person? Why should I transform myself from a careless person into a caring person? The Dalai Lama very clearly would say this on his early visits wherever he goes. Maybe not so much now, but on his early visits to the West, apparently, he would always teach, all of us want happiness, nobody wants suffering. Just like you and me want happiness, everyone wants it, nobody wants to suffer. And the translator at that time, Jeffrey Hopkins, was wondering why the Dalai Lama is giving such very, very simple advice, which even a child might know. But then, of course, as he became a practitioner, not just a scholar and translator, and then became apparently a very, very, very good practitioner, praised by His Holiness as well, he begins to look at how that teaching is so deep. And he says you have to do it by relating it to your own feelings, your own experience. So let's look at that. We all have happy, pleasurable, what we call pleasant. There's pleasant, unpleasant feelings, right? And experiences, sensations. So how you and I, how do we feel when we have a pleasant experience, a pleasant feeling? And isn't it something we're all looking for? Pleasant sensations in the body, pleasant tastes, pleasant sounds, pleasant smells, pleasant sights, everything, How do we feel when we have a pleasant sensation or somebody says something nice to us? Try and bring something to mind. When somebody says something really nice to you, very kind, or you're in need of some support, somebody said something so useful, so kind, how do you feel? Or somebody, when you're really hungry, and then you got fed. Maybe not at home, because that's taken for granted, but yeah, it could be anywhere actually, because we're focusing here on the sensation, on the feeling. How good it feels, right, when you're hungry, to be fed, to eat something. To have just, even if you're feeding yourself with something, how good it feels. How good it feels to have a pleasant, a really wonderful aroma, smell. how we love to have certain kind of perfume or flowers which we like the smell of. We have that kind of sensation. We have a sensation, we have a feeling, something very tangible. It's not some kind of, it's not something theoretical or abstract, right? So now, how about other people? Do they have such sensations and feelings? Think about it. Think about your good friend first. Do they have pleasant sensations in the body and in the mind? And, the different five sense organs. Do they experience happy, pleasant sensations like I do? We would have to come to the conclusion, yes, they do. And they like them, they want them, want more of them, just like I want more of these kind of sensations. Does it apply to anyone beyond a friend? We may have to check a little bit because we're not used to thinking like this. The person who you see on the street or the shopkeeper, do they have such feelings, sensations, which are pleasant and which they want? Are they similar to me or the same as me in this respect? And the same as my best friend or not? Might require some analysis. The point being that is being made is that, as Jeffrey Hopkins mentions in a very useful book, he says usually when we're just going around in the world, in the street or wherever, other people, what are they? You could say, he doesn't mention the word, but we could say in the sense that we are careless about others are just shapes and forms moving around, different colored shapes and forms moving around us, moving around. We don't see them as a human being like us with a wish and a desire for pleasant sensations and feelings. And then the other side of this we have to reflect on, of course, is how we do not want unpleasant ones. How upset we get when somebody even looks at us in the wrong way, let alone says a hurtful word. Or we get hurt physically, or we get a disease or pain, bad smell. Sometimes we're forced to be in a place where there's quite a few bad smells. We don't like it. Even for a few seconds, we don't like it. So we want a certain set of sensations, feelings. We don't want another. We don't want the unpleasant ones. We cry, we're upset when people harm us, when they're not nice to us, when we have difficult situation in life. So does this happen to other people or not? We have to check. In our best friend or our parents or someone, we can see it. It's very clear. They suffer. They have difficult time. Very painful, sometimes we can see, especially with sick or old people. But does this apply to anyone else apart from my parents or good friend? Can I imagine the shopkeeper or some distant person, even just a person I pick at random in the street? Can I pick them and say, wow, are they also having some difficult, painful sensations, feelings, situations in their life which make them unhappy, just as those situations make me unhappy? At a gut, at a feeling level, tangible level, in their body and mind, do they have suffering like me or not? Even though I don't know them, or may not like them. Someone you actually have if possible, a strong dislike towards, or at least some kind of dislike, whom you don't know personally, but they're in the media or whatever, you've heard about them. historical figure. Think about them. Were they happy when someone was kind to them, when their mother was kind and gentle with them, or whoever? Did they feel suffering? Do they feel suffering when people are not nice to them, when they have anxiety or some other thought or painful situation, physically, mentally? Do they suffer? This person who is just one-dimensional person to me, just a photograph or somebody on the screen, I don't like, don't care for. Don't care what happens to them. Actually, if something not nice happens, I wouldn't be too upset. Or if they were killed for what they did in the past, I'm kind of, yeah, that's good, justice. So how many people can we begin to think of in this way? That is the thing. How can we begin to feel that it's not just me and my friends and very close people who have pleasant and unpleasant feelings, some wanted, some unwanted. One category we really want to experience, the other category we really want to avoid. So how much does this apply to other people? Beyond our small circle. Then this has many consequences, this kind of reasoning, this kind of reflection. The reason why this is very important also is because the negative emotions have that quality of exaggeration, don't they? We even define them in that way. Ignorance exaggerates a certain quality of solidity and independence, of the personality of the I. Attachment exaggerates positive, attractive qualities in an object, thinking it will bring happiness. Anger exaggerates unlikable qualities, or qualities we feel are bad, and so we want to push away or even harm that object or person. There's always a sense of exaggeration. Here we're trying to look at how things are for other beings in the same way as they are for me. Beings have exactly the same kind of situations and experiences as I do, pretty much. So similar. At a physical level, at a mental level. The most distant person, the most distant, hateful, historical person, living person. They're just like me and you, in this regard. And of course, if we analyze deeper, we can see that those who appear to be or have behaved very, very badly towards others are the ones who are, the most damaged and the most who had so much kind of mental distress and pain and sort of unpleasant feelings in their life that negativity was the only way they could express themselves. So then, the consequence of thinking like this, if we really go into it a lot, is that we no longer accept the sort of propaganda of our own mind and others, where we put others down, we don't care for others, we demonize certain people. The example Jeffrey Hopkins gave in his book is that before you go and bomb Saddam Hussein in Iraq, you have to make people think that he's less than human. You have to see him as a demon, as a terrible person. And of course the Iraqis too, as terrible people or whatever, and doing all sorts of awful things. So it's miles away from seeing how, in so many ways, Saddam Hussein and ourselves are the same. Wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. Craving for, thirsting for happy experiences, good experiences. Not wanting pain, suffering. Of course, on a lesser level, we do that with people all the time, every day. We categorize. People we care for, people we don't care for. And then third category, whom we really just dislike and may even try to harm those people. We have negative thoughts about those people regularly. So anyway, here we're trying to see the basic ground that all of us living beings share, so that we can develop some sense of unity with others, not just categorizing in a competitive way, grasping at a certain group, pushing away another group. How can we see our common humanity? This is the first necessary step, with equanimity. So let's have some tea, and then we'll start looking at some useful verses and slogans which are used in the Mahayana mind training tradition to transform the mind and to transform difficult circumstances into a spiritual path. Yeah.